The first time I saw her, I wasn't looking for anything. I was killing time at the bookstore across from the bus stop, pretending to browse, waiting for the rain to slow. The place smelled of old paper and dust, the kind of scent that seeps into your jacket and follows you home. I was flipping through a travel guide I couldn't afford when I noticed her. Not noticed, pulled toward. She was standing in the aisle across from me, reading the back of a hardcover like the words were testing her. Mid-40s, maybe a little older, but she carried herself in a way that made the number irrelevant. Her coat was folded over her arm, hair pulled back like she didn't want to make a statement, and yet she did anyway. I should have looked away. I didn't. When she glanced up, our eyes met for a second longer than was comfortable. Long enough that I felt myself do something stupid. I smiled. Not big, not charming, just a half curve that wanted her to know I'd been caught. She didn't smile back. Not exactly, but her lips tightened like she was suppressing one. Then she returned to her book, shutting me out as easily as closing a door. I should have left it there. Instead, I drifted closer under the excuse of coincidence. My shelf became her shelf. She was holding a novel now, thumbing the first page. I picked up the same one, though my hands shook slightly, and it slipped. The thud on the floor was louder than it should have been. Her hand reached down first. Slim fingers with no rings. She picked it up and held it out to me. For some reason, I hesitated before taking it, as though touching the same book might count as touching her. "Careful," she said quietly, her voice low, steady, carrying the kind of calm I could never fake. Not everything is meant to be held so tightly. I wanted to answer, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I nodded and took the book, too aware of the heat in my own hand. The moment stretched. Too long. A man cleared his throat at the end of the aisle, breaking the silence. She turned, placed her book back on the shelf, and began to walk away. I should have let her go, but something in me pushed forward, clumsy and reckless. "You didn't even check it out," I said. She stopped, half-turned, one eyebrow raised like she couldn't decide if I was amusing or annoying. "I've already read it." And that was it. She left me standing there with a book I didn't want and a question I couldn't ask. Later, on the bus ride home, the rainwater dripping from my jacket onto the seat, I kept replaying the scene. The way her voice lingered in the air longer than it should have. The weight of the glance that didn't feel accidental. I couldn't explain why it mattered. I barely knew her. Yet something in her tone, "Don't hold it so tightly," felt like more than advice about a book. I told myself I'd forget her by morning. But that night, lying in bed, the words I almost said looped through me like a heartbeat. "Don't say you love me. Then don't make me prove it." And I knew. This wasn't over. The bookstore had turned into something like a magnet. I told myself it was for the quiet, for the smell of paper, and the way the world slowed down between the shelves. But really, I was waiting without admitting it. And she came. Again. This time, not in the fiction section, but at the counter, her coat draped over her arm like before. She was carrying a stack of books too tall for one hand, balancing them with her elbow while searching through her bag. I saw the way her fingers trembled when she tried to pull out her wallet. Not clumsy, just tired, maybe. Tired in a way that didn't match her posture or the steady tone I remembered. The clerk was busy, so I stepped forward before I thought better of it. "Here, let me." She looked up, startled. Recognition flickered across her face, and for a moment, I thought she might tell me to leave her alone. Instead, she sighed softly and tilted the stack toward me. "They're heavier than they look," she said. I took them. The weight surprised me, dense, solid, pressing into my forearms. She had chosen serious books, biographies, essays, not the light paperbacks most people grabbed on rainy afternoons. We carried them to the counter together. I noticed her nails, short, unpolished. Her wrist bone sharp where the sleeve of her sweater had slipped back. I shouldn't have noticed, but I did. When she reached for her wallet, a small laugh escaped her, almost to herself. "Of course," she murmured. "The one day I forget my card." I caught it, the slight crack in her voice, the vulnerability slipping through the surface. She stood straighter quickly, adjusting the strap of her bag, putting the mask back on. "I'll come back tomorrow," she said, as if ending the scene. Before I knew it, I pulled out my own card. "It's fine. I've got it." Her eyes cut to mine sharply, guarded, not grateful. No, the word landed like a wall between us. I didn't mean, I stumbled, heat rising in my chest. It's just, they're already here. Would be ashamed to. She interrupted, softer this time. Don't try to fix something that isn't broken. Her tone wasn't cruel, but it was final. We stood there, an awkward pause thickening between us. The clerk shifted behind the counter, pretending not to listen. She reached out, gently pulled the books back from me, and stacked them neatly by the register. Her hands moved with precision, like ritual. Then, as she turned to leave, she hesitated. Just for a second. Her fingers brushed the edge of one book, lingering as if it carried more weight than paper should. I caught the look on her face, not the strong, steady calm she wore like armor, but something fragile, almost breaking through. She noticed me seeing it, and in an instant, the expression vanished. "Thank you," she said, finally. Not for the help, not for the offer. Just a simple thank you, spoken too softly to be casual. And then she was gone, coat swaying against her side, leaving me standing by the counter with nothing in my hands except the echo of her pause. The rain came back the night I saw her again. Harder this time, slanting across the street in sheets that bent the streetlights into halos. The bookstore had already closed, and I was half running toward the cafe next door when I noticed her, sitting alone at the corner table by the window. She wasn't reading this time, just sitting, hands wrapped around a mug that had gone cold by the look of it. The world outside was a blur of wet glass and taxi headlights, and she seemed untethered. I almost walked past. Almost. But instead, I pushed the door open and stepped inside, rain dripping from my jacket onto the tiled floor. She saw me. A flicker of recognition, and then something else. Not a smile, not surprise. More like resignation. Still, she gestured lightly toward the empty chair across from her. I sat. Too quickly. The chair scraped against the floor. "You'll drown out there," she said, voice low, eyes still on the window. I laughed nervously. I've survived worse. The silence stretched, but it wasn't empty. It was thick, humming with the sound of the rain battering the glass. I watched her hands tighten around the mug, the faint tremor in her fingers. "You always wait out storms here?" I asked. She shook her head. "No, just tonight." Then, after a pause, "Some nights feel heavier than others." The words landed between us like a confession she hadn't meant to give. Her eyes flicked to mine, as if daring me to ask, but I didn't. I couldn't. Instead, I noticed the small things. The way her hair had slipped loose from its tie, the dark circles under her eyes she hadn't covered with makeup, the soft hitch in her breath before she spoke. I wanted to say something reckless. I wanted to tell her I noticed too much, that I couldn't stop replaying her words from before, that she felt less like a stranger than anyone I'd known. My mouth opened, but her phone buzzed. The sound shattered everything. She picked it up quickly, screen lighting her face. Her lips pressed tight, unreadable. After a moment, she silenced it and set it face down on the table. "Work," she said too quickly. The word was an excuse, not the truth. We both knew it, but I didn't push. Another pause. Longer this time. My knee brushed against hers under the table. An accident, but I didn't move right away. Neither did she. The rain pounded harder, the cafe humming with the low chatter of people waiting for the storm to break. And then, just when I thought she might say something, anything, she stood, gathering her coat, her bag, everything in quick, practiced movements. "I should go," she said. Her voice was steady again, the softness gone. I rose too, almost out of instinct, and for one fleeting moment, we were close, too close. The scent of her perfume, faint and worn, brushed against me as she slipped past. I didn't touch her, but I almost did, and that almost has been burning. I'd stayed late at the cafe again, half hoping she might appear, half ashamed that I was waiting at all. And she did, walking in just before closing, shoulders damp from the mist outside, coat folded neatly over her arm. She didn't look surprised to see me. She didn't even hesitate, just slid into the seat across from mine, as though we'd been meeting here all along. We didn't order anything. The staff was already wiping down counters, stacking chairs. It was quiet, too quiet, Just the hum of the fridge in the corner, the faint shuffle of closing time. I tried to think of something light to say, something casual. Nothing came. Instead, she stared at me. Not hostile, not warm, just steady, as though she'd finally decided to see me without turning away. "What are we doing?" she asked. The words were quiet, but they cut through me sharper than anything else she could have said. I opened my mouth, closed it again. She didn't fill the silence. She just waited. "I don't know," I finally said. And it was the truth. Her fingers rested on the table, still, except for the faintest tapping of her thumb against the wood. A rhythm, like she was holding something back. "This isn't," she began, then stopped. Her eyes flicked away, toward the window, where the streetlight haloed against the wet glass. "It isn't normal." The space between us thickened. I could feel my heart climbing, desperate to close the distance. But I stayed still. "You look at me," she said finally, "like you expect something." "I don't," I lied. My voice cracked, betraying me. Her gaze came back to mine. She didn't smile, didn't blink, just studied me, as if the silence itself might reveal the truth. The cafe lights flickered, the staff clattered dishes in the back. The world was still moving, but we weren't. I wanted to reach out, to take her hand, to give shape to the air between us. But I didn't, because the silence already held everything. She leaned back, exhaled slowly. For a moment, I thought she might stand up, leave again like before. Instead, she whispered, so soft I barely caught it. "You make me feel seen. And I don't know if I want that." The line landed heavy, like a stone in my chest. Because it wasn't rejection. It wasn't acceptance either. It was something far more dangerous, truth. And once spoken, we couldn't go back, G and me ever since. We didn't see each other for a week after that night. I told myself it was better that way, that the silence she left me with was meant to be a warning. But the truth is, I went back to the cafe more than once, half hoping, half dreading. And then, when I had finally convinced myself to stop, she was there again. Not in the cafe. On the bus. It was late. Too late for coincidences. She sat 2 rows ahead, her reflection blurred in the dark window. For a minute, I thought I should stay where I was, let her keep the distance she had chosen. But she turned her head, saw me, and with the faintest tilt of her chin, gave permission. I slid into the seat across the aisle. Neither of us spoke for a while. The bus hummed through quiet streets, street lamps flickering past like pulses. Finally, she shifted, pulling her bag onto her lap, fingers digging through until she found her phone. She stared at the screen, then pressed play. The sound was faint, but I could hear it, a voicemail. A man's voice. Older, steady, almost kind. The words weren't clear, but the tone was unmistakable. Regret. Apology. Goodbye. She didn't flinch. Just let it play out, eyes fixed on the dark glass. When it ended, the bus felt heavier. "That was my husband," she said softly, not looking at me. I froze. She gave the smallest nod. "He died. Years ago. Heart attack. Quick. Too quick." Her thumb brushed the edge of her phone, as if she could wear the device down to nothing. I keep that voicemail. I don't know why. It was the last one. He was apologizing for being late, for missing dinner. I hated him for always working too much. And then, she cut herself off, lips tightening. The bus rattled on. I had no words that didn't feel wrong. Finally, she turned to me. Her eyes were tired but steady, piercing through me in a way that made the world outside vanish. "Do you understand now? Why this?" She gestured between us, not touching, but close enough I could feel the weight of it. "Why it can't happen." I swallowed hard. I wanted to tell her I did understand. I wanted to tell her I didn't care. Both truths sat on my tongue, colliding, and I couldn't choose. So I just looked at her, not blinking, not moving, until she whispered the words that landed like a fault line cracking open between us. "You remind me of him. That's what terrifies me." The bus jolted over a pothole, but I barely noticed. Her confession had already shifted everything. We didn't talk after that bus ride. Not for days. Maybe a week. I tried not to think about her, but I failed the way you fail at not breathing. You can hold it for a while, then it breaks out of you. It was late again when I saw her next. The bookstore, half empty, lights dimmed for closing. She was in the corner chair by the window, not browsing this time, just sitting, a half-read book resting in her lap. I should have walked past. I should have let her stay inside her silence. But I didn't. I sat across from her. No words, just the scrape of my chair against the floor. She didn't look surprised or annoyed, just tired. The kind of tired that doesn't come from lack of sleep, but from carrying too much for too long. Minutes passed. The hum of the air vent, the shuffle of the clerk behind the counter, the low tick of the wall clock. I thought maybe we would sit like that forever. Then, finally, she spoke. Not loud, not even steady. "I don't know how to do this," she whispered. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees. "Neither do I." Her eyes flicked up, searching mine for mockery or naivety. But I stayed there, unflinching. "This isn't supposed to happen," she said. "Not with me. Not with you." I didn't argue. I didn't tell her she was wrong. Because we both knew the truth already. It had happened, whether we wanted it to or not. The silence came again, but this time it wasn't sharp. It softened around us, thick but almost warm. Her hand shifted, fingers brushing the book in her lap. Without thinking, without deciding, my own hand moved closer across the table. Not reaching, not grabbing. Just close enough that if either of us wanted, the space could vanish. She noticed. Of course she noticed. Her fingers hesitated, trembled once, then stilled. Slowly, deliberately, she let them fall the last inch between us. Skin against skin. Barely touching, but everything changed. I didn't breathe. Neither did she. The air between us was gone, and in its place was something quiet, something undeniable. We didn't speak. Words would have broken it, made it smaller than it was. Instead, we just sat there, two hands on one book, the world narrowing to that single point of contact. Her head tilted, just slightly, like she was about to rest it against mine. She didn't. She stopped an inch away, close enough that I could feel her breath, warm and unsteady. And in that fragile space, where nothing more happened and nothing needed to, I knew we had crossed the line we'd been circling all along. Not with a kiss, not with a declaration, but with silence. The kind of silence you collapse into, because it finally feels like home. Looking back now, I realize it wasn't about the bookstore or the cafe or the storm that kept finding us. It wasn't even about the silence, though that silence still follows me like a song I can't turn off. It was about her, the way she made the world heavier and lighter at the same time. When I first saw her, I thought it was chance. A look across a shelf, a smile caught too long. But it wasn't chance, it was recognition. Not of who she was, but of who I could be when I was with her. I didn't know that at the time. I just knew I couldn't look away. She taught me something I didn't expect. That love, or whatever this was, doesn't have to be loud, doesn't have to be claimed, doesn't even have to be named. Sometimes it's in the pauses, the unfinished sentences, the quiet weight of a hand resting near yours. And her? She let me see what she tried so hard to hide. The grief. The fear of being seen too closely, too clearly. She carried her loss like armor, and yet she still let me close enough to touch the cracks. That was more intimate than any kiss could have been. People think love stories are about declarations, about grand gestures, fireworks, impossible timing. Maybe that's true for some, but not for us. Ours was built in stolen minutes, shared silences, and one fragile touch that said more than a lifetime of words. Did it change me? Yes. I don't rush anymore. I listen differently. I notice the small things, the way someone's hands tremble, the pause before they speak, the laugh they try to hide. She taught me to see, really see, and to understand how much weight a single glance can carry. And her? I can't answer for her. All I know is that when she let her hand fall into mine, it wasn't an accident. It was a choice. Quiet, unsteady, but real. Maybe that's all we ever needed. Not a promise. Not a future written in stone. Just a moment where neither of us had to pretend anymore. So if you're listening to this, maybe that's the lesson. Sometimes the most powerful love isn't the one shouted from rooftops, but the one whispered in silence, held in a breath, resting in a touch that lingers long after it's gone. And if this story stayed with you, even just a little, tell me, have you ever felt something that didn't need words? Because that's where it lives. In the space between what's said and what's never spoken.